Thank you, Joel. I really appreciate that. Josh is probably thinking, I'm sure glad he didn't give me that song. That was tough. That was a hard song. Did a great job. But I want you to kind of think about that song a little bit, this morning as we're going to spend some time talking about the meaning of that song. But I was listening to the words and I was hearing everybody sing those words, and I was thinking to myself how when these words are put into song, how it just changes things. If we just listen to the words and we read those words and think about those words, that it has such meaning, but it's more than that. It really stirs up within you the emotion that's attached to it, and gives us such a sense of awe. These songs have been with us for so long. In a lot of cases, all of our lives, we have heard these songs, year in and year out, and a lot of them have so much attached to them. And we may not think about the attachment these songs have, but the attachment the song has is based on the memories we have revolving around them. That's why songs are so good. Sometimes you hear songs and you think, why was this ever a hit? Why did anybody ever like this song? But it's because we've grown up with them. And they've been a part of who we are, especially songs within our community as we sing songs together. A lot of these songs from these hymnals that we sing have been a part of us forever. And their meaning is so powerful because they have so many memories attached to them. And especially songs like this. So I'm glad that we're doing this sermon series talking about these songs that are devoted to the birth of Jesus during this time of the year. Songs that we generally only sing this time of the year. We kind of have a running rule in my house that as soon as December's over, that's it. No more Christmas songs. We're done until next year, and Thanksgiving rolls around. We can start playing them again. But I just get kind of tired of them. But they're good and they're meaningful and they have so much to offer. And so we're going to spend some more time this morning talking about that with this particular song. I want to read some of the lyrics to you. I need to stay pretty close to this mic because there's nobody upstairs doing the mic change. And so if I wander off, you can kind of point me back in the right direction. But this first verse, I just want to think about these words. O come, Emmanuel, ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appears. O come, thy day spring, come and cheer our spirits by thine advent here. Despair the gloomy clouds of night in death's shadow put to flight. O come, thou wisdom from on high, and order all things far and nigh. To us the path of knowledge show, cause us in her ways to go. O come, desire of nations, all peoples in one heart and mind. Bind envy and strife and quarrel cease. Fill the whole world with heaven's peace. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. So the setting of the song has to do with some prophecy from Isaiah, and we'll get there in a moment, but I just want us to think about the song in general. The setting of the song is Israel. These are God's covenant people. These are the people who have the covenant promises of God, but they're in exile. And they're really hinging their hope on some promises that God made that someday things would be different. And so, I've always tried to put myself in the place of some of these people, and I don't know how to really put myself in the place of a person who is taken away from their homeland and put into a foreign land with foreign kings and foreign languages, and just all the things are different. We enjoy our traditions, don't we? We enjoy the holiday season and the things that we're going to be experiencing as tradition. But I just wonder what it would be like if we were to be taken from this place and sent somewhere else where there were different traditions and different ways of living, and how that would feel, and how that would make us long for home and desire to be back into our ways. Sometimes we talk about getting caught in a rut, but some of those ruts are comforting and familiar and not all bad. Or, our traditions as a people can be a part of who we are. It gives us a sense of belonging. It gives us a sense of home. And that's where Israel is in this song and in the scripture we're going to read. They want to be home. They want to be home. They just want to be back where they belong. And they're being taken away from their home and sent into exile, but they have these promises, and I'm sure they repeated them over and over to each other in hopeful expectation. Maybe they've even sung some of these as songs to each other, when they come together. One day, someday, God is going to make things right. But the song makes you stop and think a little bit. It makes you stop to think, is it just Israel in literal captivity that the song is focusing on? Is that really the main focus? Because as you listen to the song, you start getting this glimpse of, okay, the song is obviously talking about Israel in captivity, but it also talks about that day that Jesus comes. And you're thinking, well, is this Israel in captivity, or is this Israel out after Jesus' birth, looking back on the times of captivity and reminiscing? And I think it's done that way on purpose, because the songwriter has picked up perfectly the aspect of the now, but not yet, of God's wonderful promises. Yes, it's happening now. In that moment, in exile, they can enjoy the peace of knowing that their God has a future for them, that something is going to change, that the future is going to be bright because of the promises of God. But it also has that aspect of there is a future expectation. We might say a greater fulfillment. More is coming. More is on the way. Greater things are in the horizon. And the writer just picks perfectly the prophecies that speak of Jesus and how, yes, they had a fulfillment. Yes, they gave people in the past hope, but they also give people in the future hope. That there's so much more depth to what God has to say than the surface level expectations that we seem to focus on and to hang on. So for Israel, the Son of God, the Messiah, in a sense, has come. He has appeared in real time. As you read through the books of Matthew, you read through the Gospels, we see that Israel received their Messiah. They received their Christ. Now, I say they received their Messiah, they received their Christ. They didn't actually, in a lot of cases, receive him well, but he was given. He showed up. And that word Emmanuel, God with us, God was with them. And that's a fulfillment of all the wonderful promises that God has made. Finally, God has come to earth to ransom his people, to free them from sin and death, to take them out of darkness and bring them into light, that God has finally arrived. But then I also have to wonder, is that the end of that story? Right? Is that how they ended their story? Did Israel just say, well, now God's arrived, that's the end of the story? Or did they understand that there was even more? There's more to come. In fact, Paul picks up this writing in Thessalonians when he's writing to the church in Thessalonica. 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 16 says this, "For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel and the trumpets of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with him in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words." It's like the song was saying, that death's dark shadows put to flight. There's more to that story. There's more than just the hopeful expectation of the birth of the Messiah. There's more to that story. They gave hope to Israel as they were in captivity to Babylon, as they were waiting for God's rescue, as they were waiting to go home. Oh, come, Emmanuel. Oh, come, literally, God with us. God be with us. And he did, right? He did send his son. But he has sent so many in between that period of time, where there have been many born of Israel, born of Abraham. And I wonder if as time progressed, if each child that was born, if maybe Israel as a nation saw that birth and wondered, maybe this is the one. Maybe it's he. Maybe this is the time. Maybe this is the moment. I don't know. I don't know how they saw that, but I can imagine with that kind of promise, I can imagine what I would be thinking. I can imagine what I would be hoping for. As I looked upon the world and I saw the chaos, and I even looked at my own fellow countrymen and I saw maybe their disobedience, or maybe the strife, maybe the quarreling, maybe the things of this world that are so broken and so wrong, and I thought to myself, when would the Messiah come? When would God be with us? This whole title comes from Isaiah chapter 7. And then in the chapter, we're going to spend some time in Isaiah and this prophecy. But Isaiah is writing during a time where we have the king of Aram, and then there's the king of Israel. This would be the northern kingdom. If you don't remember that, the kingdom was broken up into two parts. There is the northern kingdom that had the 12 tribes, and then the other two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, were the southern kingdom. And so the kingdom has been divided. And so the northern kingdom and its king joins forces with the king of Aram. And their purpose is to go against Assyria. And so they're trying to get Judah to respond, to help them out, to be part of them, so that they can join forces to fight against Assyria. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. In the past, anytime there was any kind of oppression, anytime another nation came in to attack, then if God was with them and they were with God, they had nothing to fear. They didn't need to join forces with anybody because God was with them. The victory was already won before it was even fought if God was fighting their battles with them. And so what this tells us is the northern kingdoms have already gone astray. They've already lost focus. They're already joining forces with the enemy so that they can try to defeat a perceived enemy, and they're doing it without God. And so these two kings, they threaten Judah and Ahaz, and the people, they're afraid. And so Isaiah picks up on this. So if you look at Isaiah chapter 7 and verse 2, it says this: his heart and the hearts of his people shook as the trees of the forest shake with the wind. They're afraid. And so God is going to take his person. He's going to take Isaiah and he's going to send him over to Judah to take this message of hope, this message of expectation. And I just want you to spend some time thinking about these words in that context as we read them. He says this in verse 4. He says, take care and be calm. That's good advice, isn't it? You know, when we're afraid and we're trembling and we're worried and we're concerned and life is life and it's happening all around us, the words of God, take care and be calm. Have no fear. Do not be faint-hearted because of these two, look what he calls them, stubs of smoldering firebrands. You know, that's a little insulting. But it's meant to be, right? He's trying to make this point. You know, they look like towering trees. They look like powerful forces. And the people are afraid. And God says, you know, they're really just stubs of smoldering firebrands. That's pretty much all they are. On account of the fierce anger of Rezin and Aram and the son of Remaliah, and because of Aram with Ephraim and the son of Remaliah. Now, Ephraim is a word that is used to describe, or a name to describe, the whole northern kingdom. It's kind of a prophetic nickname, if you will, for the northern tribes. He says in verse 6, let's go to verse 5. He says, because Aram with Ephraim and the sons of Remaliah has planned evil against you, saying, let us go up against Judah and terrorize it and make for ourselves a breach in its walls and set up the son of Tabal as king in the midst of it. So they're trying to get this king of Judah to respond, and he's not responding. He's not going to join forces with them. So what they're thinking is, you know, if we go down there and we attack them and we put our own king in place, then that king will lead the people of that region in war with us, and we'll be able to defeat the Assyrians. Now, of course, it's not true, right? Because this battle is not of the Lord. It's of themselves. It's already been lost long before it was fought. But it's interesting to think that they're willing to do that, to replace this king so that they can have their own king in place. But what he's saying, in essence, God is telling him, look, all those rumors that you heard of war, all those rumors and those threats that you hear about, that people keep talking about, they're all true. Those people are against you. Imagine hearing those words. Because we all have assumptions, we all have ideas, and we think everybody's against us. Sometimes that's how it feels. And sometimes it's not true. In fact, a lot of times it's not true. It's just us, being paranoid. We think the whole world is against us. In reality, it's, we're just kind of messing up. But then we think about this scenario, and God literally says, no, you're right. They're all against you. And they're coming after you. And they're powerful to a sense. But in my eyes, they're just smoldering stumps. There's twigs. They're gone. But the threats are real. The threats are real. They really do want to come, and they really do want to attack you. They are against you. All your paranoia, it's real. And you can imagine that wouldn't really help in the moment, You would think, well, that just makes me even more fearful. Let's keep reading. Look at verse 7. He says, thus says the Lord God, it shall not stand, nor shall it come to pass. For the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And then he says, now within another 65 years, Ephraim will be shattered, so that it is no longer a people. And the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is the son of Remaliah. If you will not believe, you surely shall not last. In other words, yes, the threats are real. Yes, they're coming. But I can stop them. That's not above me. That's not beyond my ability. I have the power to do that. In fact, I already have purposed in my mind to get rid of Ephraim. They're done. It's not going to happen right now, but it will. He even gets some time frame. He said, 65 years from now, they're done. You may have heard the lost tribes of Israel, the lost 10 tribes. You may have heard that phrase. Well, that's what we're talking about. God has already purposed to destroy them, to get rid of them, to demolish them in His time. When He's ready, He will deal with the people just as He says He will. Now, I like the NIV's translation of that last phrase because I like what it says, and I think it's a super powerful statement for us to think about. The NIV says this: if you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. In other words, if you don't trust me, you don't believe my words, you don't respond as if my words are truth in your heart, there's no hope for you. There's no hope. Because without me, there's no way that you're going to win. Without me, there is no victory. Without me, there is no defeat of your enemies. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. And so that leaves the southern tribes, Judah, and the king of Judah with two choices. They're going to have to make a choice. They're either going to stand up on their own and go against these two nations themselves with their own military might, with their own military power, with all of their arsenal, with all of their strength, with all of their manpower, and they're going to have to rely on themselves and go to battle and defeat these enemies or be defeated. That's choice number one. Or they will stand firm in their faith and stand firm. That's it. They will either trust God to do what He promises to do, to win their battles for them, to defeat the enemy that's against them, trust God, and they will have victory. Or they can try with their own manpower, their own strength, their own wisdom to defeat the enemy themselves. Those are the two choices. Now, when you put it that way, it's a no-brainer, right? Of course, yes, Lord, I know I'm going to put my faith in you. I'm going to let you fight my battles. And you would think, well, of course the king is going to agree to this. One of God's prophets is standing right in front of him and telling him these things. Hey, the enemy's coming. They're coming to defeat you. Oh, and by the way, I have already purposed to destroy them, and if you have put your faith in me, you'll have victory. That's what Isaiah's message is. And you have to ask, well, who in their right mind would ever say no to that, right? Who would ever say, no, Lord, I'm good. I got it. I'm on my own. But I can't help but think how often I have done that. I can't think of how often I have said, Lord, I've got this. I'm good. I'll take care of this problem. I'll take care of this issue. I'll deal with this myself. And I can't help but wonder how many of you have experienced that too, where you think to yourself, Lord, I'm good. I'm not going to bother you with this thing. I've got it. If you do not stand firm in your faith, you will not stand at all. Look at verse 10. He says, Then the Lord spoke again to Ahaz, saying, Ask a sign for yourself from the Lord your God. Make it deep as Sheol or high as heaven. That's the request. That's how God's going to know that Ahaz is on board, right? Ask a sign for yourself. And here's what Ahaz says in verse 12. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, nor will I test the Lord. Now, at first, that sounds good. It's like, man, this guy's on par. He's like, I trust you, Lord, so much, I'm not even going to ask for a sign. That's what it sounds like. But that is not at all what he's thinking. In fact, as Isaiah continues to unfold this idea, we realize really quickly that Ahaz is not even on the right page. He has missed it entirely. He has made a choice. Look what he says in verse 13. He says, Then he said, Listen now, O house of David, it is too slight a thing for you to try the patience of men, that you will try the patience of my God as well. This is Isaiah speaking to. He gets it. Right? He realizes what's going on here. He didn't hear Ahaz's words. In fact, he probably was looking at him at the time. He probably saw him roll his eyes and, no, I'm good. I'm not going to ask for a sign. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to bother the Lord with that kind of stuff. I've got this. And Isaiah is like, what are you talking about? We all know you don't. Right? And that's how it is with us, isn't it? A lot of times people from the outside can look at us and say, dude, you don't got this. I mean, you're not even close, man. But we see ourselves as, yeah, we're good. I got this. I'm good. That's what Isaiah is doing. He's looking at the king and he's saying, dude, you're not good. You're off. You need the Lord's help. You need to put everything upon him. You need to let him take care of all of your issues. Especially this one, or you're not going to make it. But look at verse 14. Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The Lord's going to give you one whether you want it or not. You should have just conceded. You should have just said, Lord, yes, give me a sign. Please be with me and help me through this trial and tribulation. But no, he says, no, I'm not going to do that. And Isaiah says, well, the Lord's going to give you one anyway, whether you ask for it or not. He says, Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and he shall call his name Emmanuel. Now, I don't know how Ahaz interpreted this. Maybe he thought, Isaiah's messing with him. He's like, man, Isaiah, what does that even mean? I don't even understand those words. I don't comprehend what you're telling me. In fact, I'm not even going to ask because I don't even want to know. I've made up in my mind and my heart what I'm planning on doing. Look at verse 15. He continues. He said, He'll eat curd and honey at the time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good. For before the boy will be known enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread will be forsaken. Now we know what that word means. Emmanuel means God with us. And this will be the sign that will be given to them, a sign that kind of serves a dual purpose, right? It's kind of this hopeful expectation that says, you know what, God's going to make things right in the future. It's not going to be your lifetime. It's not going to be my lifetime. But God has already purposed in his mind to make things right. You just have to make a choice of what side you're going to be on. That's all you really have to do. You don't have to fight this battle alone. You don't have to be so concerned and worried about your enemies because God has already purposed to destroy your enemies. He has already purposed to give them what they deserve. for being rebellious. Now your choice is to join them in their rebellion or join God in his victory. And then we look at God and say, God, I want it now. I want the victory now. I want the relief now. I don't want to suffer anything. I just want it. Lord, just give it to me. If you really loved me, Lord, you would give me what I want. And God says, isn't my promise enough? Isn't my promise that I'm going to make things all perfectly right? Isn't that enough? And this is the sign. Now, Ahaz would never actually see this sign in his lifetime, but that is the sign. And so what we see here is that God is giving this as a deeper, more meaningful purpose. And if you look at Matthew says this, when an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream, saying, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child who has been conceived in her is of the Holy Spirit. And then she will bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins. Now focus on these next few verses. Now all this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Behold, the virgin shall be with child, and shall bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which translated means God with us. Israel was released from Babylonian captivity. They did get to go back home 530 BC, around that time frame. But I don't know. Did they understand that this wasn't the totality of God's release? That this wasn't the end of the story? You know, I'd like to know sometimes what these people were thinking. I'm sure they were very grateful to be out of Babylonian captivity. I'm sure they were grateful to be back home. I'm sure they were grateful to start rebuilding their lives again. But what did they really understand of that? What did they really know? Did they really understand that that was not the totality of God's promises, that there was more to come? Did they understand that God had a greater and bigger purpose for them? It wasn't about having a land. It wasn't about being separate from everybody. It wasn't about that. It was more than that. It was more meaningful. It was deeper. It was beyond expectation. And then when Matthew makes that introduction and says, hey, by the way, right, as the apostles are going out and preaching the gospel to the Jewish people, and they come to this part of that narrative where they say, God sent his son to earth, born of a virgin. This little baby, Jesus, has become the Savior of the world. And they took that message and they went back to Isaiah and they said, don't you remember what God said through Isaiah? This is it. It makes you wonder how many of them looked at that and said, now I understand. Now I get it. Now I see the big picture of what God is accomplishing in the world. And I want to be part of that. What do these stories mean to us? Well, they mean that when we hear these promises of God and everything that God has accomplished in the past with his people, and we think about the promises that God has given us, in the moment, it should give us hope, confidence. It should give us the kind of expectation that says whatever happens in this world, whatever happens in this life, whatever this world throws at me, whatever trials or tribulations or hardships, struggles, I can rest assured that as long as I stand firm in my faith, I will stand. That as long as I stand firm in my faith, I will stand. But if I do not stand firm in my faith, I will not stand at all. That I have to put my confidence in God. That I can't look at God and say, God, I've got this. Because I clearly don't. I clearly don't. But if I have faith in God, he has this. He's got it. He always has. He has always brought the victory. And what he asks of us is not some great miraculous thing. He doesn't say, okay, Sean, you're going to have to fight this battle and win this war and climb this mountain and do this and do that and do this and do that. And then maybe when you're done with all of that and you survive, maybe I will give you a blessing. No. He says, no, I've taken care of all of that. I've fought your battles. I've climbed your hills. I've won your wars. I have done it all. And I have done it through Emmanuel. And what I ask of you is to put your faith in me. Follow me. Listen to me. And the future is going to be perfect. We do that, right, when we put on Jesus in baptism. I know it becomes a taboo subject, and we talk about it sometimes so much that I think we've missed the significance of that concept. When we put our faith in Jesus and we're burying the old man of sin and raised up to walk in newness of life, we're raised up to walk in a life that is in full confidence of the salvation that we have received, but the salvation that we will receive. When Jesus comes in the clouds and brings victory, when he comes like a king and he calls his people to himself, and we gleefully and gladly go to him and be with him, and we see the victory of God, the salvation of God in the person of Jesus. You know, we have to compare that to the moment that Israel first saw the child. We too have that hopeful expectation that we will see the man when he comes to bring us peace. But in the meantime, we sing this song. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee. If there's anybody here this morning, maybe you have not put on Jesus in baptism and something you've been thinking about and ready to put your confidence and your faith in him, this opportunity has been made available for you. Maybe you've been part of that journey for a while, but you have been going at it on your own. And you have not been putting your faith fully in God's victory. And you need the prayers of this congregation. Whatever your need may be this morning, if you would please come forward as we stand and as we sing.